you are here to say goodbye to us, and we don't have a good word for it in English. The best is au revoir. We'll see you again.
That was President Richard Nixon bidding farewell to his White House staff. But long before he occupied the Oval Office, Nixon was Dwight Eisenhower's VP. Their relationship was fascinating. But there's not much reporting out there about that relationship until now. Joining me now is Irwin Gellman, author of The President and the Apprentice, which takes a look at that very subject. It's great to have you with us, Mr. Gellman.
Thank you, sir.
All right, so what was the biggest misconception about Eisenhower's administration and his relationship with Richard Nixon?
Well, probably the biggest misconception that was purposefully portrayed was that somehow Eisenhower and Nixon were both anti-black, racists, unfamiliar with civil rights problems.
And so what did they do to work on that specific issue?
Well, they did a great deal to work on it. Eisenhower was very effective in bringing civil rights forward. As a matter of fact, from the period of Harry Truman through and up to Lyndon Johnson, he was probably did more for civil rights than anybody. And the premier spokesman for civil rights in the 1950s was Richard Nixon.
All right, you also write about the fact that Eisenhower supposedly mistrusted Nixon and kept him at arm's length. You say that's untrue. What is the truth about the way those two worked together on issues other than civil rights?
Well, the issue was that Eisenhower was a brilliant bureaucrat who kept people in the loop. And he knew, because of his age, that he needed to keep Nixon in the loop in case he was disabled. So he saw during Congress sessions Nixon at least 3 times a week at meetings, and even more so. And through the 8 years that they were together, they had probably an A- relationship, and it's just portrayed incorrectly.
Now, are there any parallels in modern American politics to the relationship that Nixon shared with Eisenhower?
Gee, I wish there were, because they would have gotten along so much better. Eisenhower had such great self-assuredness that it didn't matter for him to share with what he called was his team, that he ran a team and it was for the good of the nation, not necessarily for the good of his ego, and it worked very, very well.
Interesting take there. Irwin Gellman, author of the new book, The President and the Apprentice, about Eisenhower and Richard Nixon. Worth a mention on your summer reading list. Thanks for being with us, Mr. Gellman.
Thank you so much for your time.
Time now for The Wire to look at some stories trending right now on Newsmax.com. And talking about Hulk Hogan, he has been fired from the WWE. Many reports say that the move had something to do with a racial incident in which Hogan allegedly made racial comments on tape about his daughter's boyfriend. Hogan says he resigned, but the WWE says no, that's not the case. He was fired. Hogan wrote on Twitter, quote, "In the storm, I release control. God in his universe will sail me where he wants me to go." Meantime, Tom Moore, one of the cartoonists behind the Archie comics, has died. Moore, who helped draw the comics for more than 4 decades, passed away this week in El Paso, Texas. The Korean War vet was 86 years old. And a salmonella outbreak linked to frozen tuna, often used in sushi, has made more than 60 people sick. Now the company that processed that fish has issued a recall. The CDC has more information about that on their Twitter feed. And take a look at this huge swarm of bugs. Yes, that's a swarm of bugs. It's in northern Texas. It was so big it could be seen on local weather radar. It was really just a collection of grasshoppers and beetles, but forecasters thought originally it was a light rainstorm. Meanwhile, a lost alligator is back in a secure facility after it escaped and wandered through the streets of New York City. The NYPD says they apprehended the reptile crossing 9th Avenue. Can you imagine seeing that? Unfortunately, the New York Daily News is reporting, well, secure, we mean that alligator is now dead. And coming up next on Newsmax Now, what is this Londoner getting all psyched up for? We're going to show you coming up here and why he immediately regretted his decision. Yeah, he's going for it. He's going for it. Plus, we're going to open up the Newsmax TV vault here in a little bit. We're going to have an interview with soon-to-be Major League Hall of Famer John Smoltz, the man you see right there. We're going to talk to him and take a look back at our discussion with the Hall of Famer about how his faith, his Christian faith, helped him through the latter part of his major league career and how it helped get him to the Hall of Fame. We're also going to talk about what he thought when the federal government started to investigate Major League ball players for things like perjury and their use of performance-enhancing drugs. Here's a look at what's coming up ahead here on Newsmax TV tonight. We're going to be followed by the Daily Wrap with Joe Concha and Rick Unger at 6 p.m. Then at 7 p.m. the Steve Malzberg Show. 8 p.m. make sure you tune in for Newsmax Prime with J.D. Hayworth. And then at 9 o'clock, The Hard Line. And of course, this weekend, don't forget, we have a special presentation, Trump at the Border, an insider's look at Donald Trump's trip down to Laredo, Texas. That's Saturday night at 8 p.m., 5 p.m. Pacific time. You won't want to miss it. We're coming back with more right after this.